Union News, the 21st of April 2024. Welcome to Union News, your guide to what's happening in the UK labour and trade union movement. Reports are by Pat Harrington and music is by Tim Bragg. In this week's edition, Rishi Sunak unleashes controversial overhaul of disability benefits, SNP-Green Coalition and Tory MSPs reject Labour's proposal for enhanced support to injured workers, government criticised as schools cut teaching assistants amidst funding concerns, Supreme Court ruling empowers workers against retaliation by employers. And finally, Amazon faces historic blow as union recognition application advances to workers' vote.
Rishi Sunak unleashes controversial overhaul of disability benefits. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ignited a firestorm with his unveiling of sweeping changes to disability benefits, sparking accusations of a full-on assault on disabled individuals. Sunak's proposals include stringent reforms to the Personal Independent Payment (PIP) system, aiming to tighten eligibility criteria and introduce greater medical scrutiny for claimants. In response to what he termed a sick note culture, Sunak also announced plans to shift responsibility for sick notes away from GPS, igniting concerns among mental health advocates already grappling with overstretched services. Critics argue that the proposed changes risk plunging disabled people into destitution, with some accusing the government of targeting the most vulnerable amidst economic challenges. Furthermore, Sunak's pledge to sanction benefits for non-compliance with work coach conditions, along with the threat of benefit removal after 12 months of unemployment, has drawn sharp rebuke from welfare organisations, who argue that punitive measures exacerbate financial insecurity and undermine public trust. As debate intensifies, concerns over the broader impact on NHS waiting lists and workforce shortages loom large, with calls for a more compassionate approach to welfare reform that prioritises holistic support and addresses systemic complexities.
SNP-Green Coalition and Tory MSPs reject Labour's proposal for enhanced support to injured workers. In a surprising turn of events, the SNP-Green Coalition in Scotland, backed by Tory MSPs, has quashed Scottish Labour MSP Mark Griffin's bid to bolster assistance for workers injured on the job. Griffin's Employment Injuries Advisory Council (SEIAC) bill aimed not only to establish a new employment injury benefit, but also to institute a council of experts, including trade unions, to guide its implementation and monitor progress. Despite SNP First Minister Humza Yousaf's recent pledges to prioritise support for workers and their families, his government's alliance with Tory MSPs led to the rejection of the legislation. SNP Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville defended the decision, stating, "We do not need this bill," while acknowledging Griffin's efforts and their potential contribution to future initiatives. Reacting to the outcome, Griffin expressed disappointment, accusing the government of abandoning frontline workers grappling with long-term effects of COVID-19, firefighters battling cancer, and former footballers afflicted by dementia. He criticised Yousaf's administration for failing to accelerate progress toward a more equitable industrial injuries system in Scotland and vowed to continue advocating for workers' rights. The contentious rejection underscores tensions within Scottish politics over strategies to address worker welfare and underscores the challenges facing efforts to enact meaningful legislative reforms.
Government criticised as schools cut teaching assistants amidst funding concerns. A recent survey conducted by the Sutton Trust has shed light on the concerning trend of staff cuts in schools across the UK, prompting teaching unions to criticise the government's handling of education funding. According to the survey, more than two-thirds of senior leaders in schools reported having to reduce the number of teaching assistants this year. Additionally, 1 in 3 senior leaders stated that they had to cut teaching staff, while nearly half had to reduce support staff. The impact was particularly pronounced in primary schools, where teaching assistant cuts were highest, while secondary schools experienced greater losses in both teaching and support staff. Reacting to these findings, Daniel Kabeda, the General Secretary of the National Education Union, expressed shock at the extent of the cuts, noting that 3/4 of primary schools had to reduce the number of teaching assistants to make ends meet. He criticized the government's lack of seriousness regarding education funding and urged it to wake up to the reality faced by schools nationwide. Dr. Patrick Roach, the General Secretary of NASET, echoed similar sentiments, emphasizing that children from less affluent backgrounds are disproportionately affected by these cuts, resulting in a compromised quality of education. He criticized the government's failure to invest adequately in education and called for a new government to address the ongoing crisis in schools. In response, the Department for Education defended its stance, stating that school funding has been increased to £60.7 billion this year, the highest level ever in real terms per pupil. However, critics argue that despite the increase in funding, the allocation is insufficient to meet the growing needs of schools, leading to staff cuts and resource reallocation. As the debate over education funding intensifies, the future of staffing levels and the quality of education in UK schools remains uncertain, with calls for comprehensive solutions to address the funding gap and ensure equitable access to education for all students.
Supreme Court ruling empowers workers against retaliation by employers. A landmark judgment delivered by the Supreme Court this week has bolstered the position of workers facing penalties or discrimination for engaging in strike action. The ruling, which criticizes British trade union laws for inadequately protecting workers' rights, marks a significant victory for labour rights advocates. In a scathing critique, the court highlighted the failure of current legislation to shield workers from sanctions short of dismissal during strikes, deeming it incompatible with the European Convention on Human Rights. Lady Ingrid Simler, delivering the judgment, emphasized that the ability of employers to impose punitive measures undermines the fundamental right to lawful strike action. The case, brought forward by the Unison Union on behalf of care worker Fiona Mercer, sheds light on the plight of workers facing repercussions for participating in industrial action. Mercer's battle against her employer, Alternative Futures Group, AFG, over cuts to payments for sleep-in shifts, exemplifies the challenges workers encounter when asserting their rights. Despite initial victories in lower courts, the intervention of high-ranking figures sought to overturn favorable rulings, prompting Unison to escalate the case to the Supreme Court. Following the verdict, Mercer expressed satisfaction, stating that while it wouldn't change her experience, it would serve as a deterrent to unscrupulous employers. Unison's General Secretary, Christina McAnear, hailed the ruling as the most significant industrial action case in decades, while Paul Novak of the TUC described it as a monumental victory for the union movement. However, some caution against excessive optimism, noting that the legal landscape still poses challenges to effective labour activism. Nevertheless, the judgment is seen as a positive step forward, prompting calls for broader campaigns to defend workers' rights. The implications extend beyond the immediate case, with university lecturers and other workers hopeful for redress for past punitive actions taken against them.
And finally, Amazon faces historic blow as union recognition application advances to workers' vote. In a significant development, Amazon has been dealt a decisive setback as the Central Arbitration Committee, CAC, ruled in favor of GMB's union recognition application at its Coventry warehouse. The ruling marks a milestone in GMB's efforts and brings Europe one step closer to witnessing the first recognized union at Amazon. After over a year of industrial action and 30 strike days, the CAC's decision signals a turning point in the ongoing struggle for union representation at the tech giant's facilities. The committee has mandated that an independent organization be appointed to oversee a legally binding vote of workers, indicating a crucial phase in the process. Amanda Gearing, senior organizer at GMB, hailed the ruling as a historic moment in the battle for workers' rights at Amazon. She likened the journey to a modern-day David and Goliath struggle, emphasizing the resilience of workers against the company's formidable anti-union tactics. Gearing highlighted the demands of Amazon workers for fair wages and safe working conditions, stressing the importance of dignity at work and the need for a union to advocate for their interests. In response to the ruling, an Amazon spokesperson reiterated the company's stance on employee rights, stating, "Our employees have the choice of whether or not to join a union. They always have. As the process moves forward, anticipation mounts for the upcoming ballot, with workers poised to make a crucial decision that could reshape the landscape of labor relations within Amazon's operations. The outcome of the vote holds implications not only for the Coventry warehouse, but also for the broader discourse on workers' rights and unionization in the tech industry.